Whispers. Imagine this: you walk in a room filled with people, laughter echoing in the corners, conversations buzzing like bees around honey. But somehow, even in that crowded room, you feel invisible. You smile, you nod, you try to blend in, yet deep inside you wonder, if I wasn't here today, would anyone notice? Would anyone care? Friendlessness has a way of making us feel small. It whispers lies in our ears. You're unlovable, you're unworthy. You're not enough. But what if I told you that friendlessness doesn't have to be weakness? It can be power. That sometimes when the world turns its back, that's the exact moment you discover who you truly are. Today, I want to talk to you about the woman who is friendless but fearless. The woman who doesn't need a crowd to validate her. The woman who doesn't need applause to know her worth. The woman who walks through fire alone. Not because she chose isolation, but because life gave her no other choice. Let's be honest, loneliness is hard. It's painful. It's the kind of silence that can break you. Whispers. Unless you learn to let it build you. Because here's the truth: being friendless doesn't mean being powerless. In these next few moments, whispers, I want to invite you into a journey of courage, resilience, and radical self-belief. A journey that every woman who has ever felt left out, betrayed, abandoned, or unseen needs to hear, and I'll tell you why. Because the woman who learns to rise without a hand to hold becomes unstoppable. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's the birthplace of courage. For so long, we've been conditioned to believe that showing our fears, our insecurities, or our pain makes us fragile. We've been told to hide our tears, to put on a mask of strength, to smile even when our hearts are breaking. Society whispers in our ears, don't let them see you weak. Don't let them know you're hurting. But the truth is, pretending to be unshakable is not strength. It's fear in disguise. Real strength comes when you stand in your truth, when you allow yourself to be seen raw and unfiltered, and say, this is who I am. This is my story. And I am still standing. Think about the woman who goes to work every single day carrying the weight of her struggles in silence. Maybe she's dealing with heartbreak. Whispers. Maybe she's battling financial challenge. Maybe she feels utterly alone. But she still shows up. She still gives her best. The courage isn't in hiding her pain. The courage is in waking up, putting one foot in front of the other and saying, I may not have it all together, but I will not give up. That's vulnerability. That's bravery. Or consider the mother who feels overwhelmed and exhausted. She scrolls through social media and sees other moms who look perfect. Smiling kids, spotless homes, endless energy. But deep inside, she feels like she's failing. It takes vulnerability for her to say out loud, I'm tired, I'm struggling. I don't have it all figured out. And yet, when she says those words, something powerful happens. She realizes she's not alone. Other women nod, other voices whisper, May too. And suddenly the weight she's been carrying doesn't feel quite as heavy. Her courage came not from pretending she was perfect, but from daring to be real. Think about the young girl who dreams of being an artist, a writer, a leader, but she's terrified of being judged. Her hand trembles when she shares her first piece of art. Her first story, her first speech. Vulnerability is standing on that stage, showing her heart to the world, knowing she might be criticized, but choosing to speak anyway. That moment of exposure, that willingness to be seen, that is where courage is born. Because the bravest people aren't the ones who never feel fear, but the ones who step forward despite it. How many times in life do we cover our wounds with silence? We act like we're fine when we're not. We laugh to hide the achy inside. We say yes when our hearts are screaming no. We wear strength like armor, thinking it will protect us, when in reality it only isolates us further. Vulnerability means taking off that armor even for a moment and saying, here I am. I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all together. But I'm here and I'm willing to try. That's where transformation begins. Think of the woman who lost her closest friend, who feels abandoned and unseen. She could close herself off, lock her heart, and decide never to trust again. But instead, she chooses vulnerability. She allows herself to grieve, to cry, to admit the depth of her loneliness. And in doing so, she discovers that her pain does not make her broken, it makes her human. That's courage, not shutting down, but staying open even when the world has wounded you. Or picture the employee who's afraid to speak up in a meeting, worried her ideas might be rejected. Vulnerability is raising her hand anyway, voicing her truth, knowing she might be shut down but daring to be seen. And what happens? Sometimes whispers. Her voice is exactly what the room needed. Her courage inspires others to step forward too. Vulnerability becomes a ripple effect. It awakens courage in those who witness it. We live in a culture that glorifies perfection. We admire the polished, the confident, the flawless. But let me tell you this, people don't connect with perfection whispers. They connect with honesty. When you're scared, but I'm still going to try, you inspire. When you admit, I've failed, but I'm not giving up, you give others permission to rise again. Vulnerability builds bridges where walls once stood. It creates connection where isolation once thrived. It says, you don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You just have to be real. Think about the everyday moments when someone asks you how you're doing, and instead of saying, I'm fine, you tell the truth. I'm struggling right now. That honesty could be the key that opens someone else's heart. The very words that let them breathe a little easier. Or when you admit to your child, I don't have all the answers, but I promise to walk with you through this. That's not weakness, it's strength that builds trust. Vulnerability makes us relatable, approachable, human. Courage is not found in hiding behind walls. It's found in tearing them down. It's found in the woman who admits she's lonely, but still dares to dream. In the woman who's afraid, but still chooses to act. In the woman who's been hurt, but still chooses to love again. Vulnerability is the birthplace of courage because it requires us to step into the unknown, to risk rejection, to risk failure, to risk being misunderstood. And yet, it is in those very risks that we find our deepest strength. The truth is, anyone can wear a mask. Anyone can play the part of the unbreakable, untouchable person who seems to have it all figured out. But it takes real bravery to remove the mask, to show the scars, to admit, this is me. Flawed, imperfect, but still worthy. Vulnerability is the soil where resilience grows, the spark that ignites authenticity, the foundation of every act of true courage, whispers. And when we dare to live this way, we stop fearing weakness and start embracing our power. Loneliness is not a verdict, it's an invitation. Too often we treat loneliness as a final judgment, as though it is a life sentence declaring that we are unworthy, unlovable, or forever forgotten. But loneliness is not a punishment, it's a pathway. It's a calling to look deeper within yourself, to discover parts of you that you may have ignored while the noise of the world distracted you. Loneliness whispers, come closer, come back to yourself. See who you really are without the applause, without the crowd, without the constant validation. It's not the end of the story, it's the beginning of a new chapter. Think of the woman who suddenly finds herself sitting alone at a dinner table after years of being surrounded by people. At first, the silence feels suffocating. The chair across from her feels too empty, the clinking of her fork against the plate too loud. She could interpret that loneliness as rejection, as proof that she is forgotten. But she chooses something different. She leans into the silence. She takes out a journal and begins writing her thoughts. In those pages, she rediscovers her dreams, her voice, hers. Her desires, what felt like a punishment, turn into an invitation to meet herself again. Imagine the man who used to surround himself with friends, parties, and endless noise just so he wouldn't have to sit alone with his thoughts. Then life shifts, and one by one, those distractions fade away. At first, loneliness feels like a cruel verdict, that maybe he wasn't good enough to keep those people close. But as he spends time in the quiet, he starts painting again. Something he abandoned years ago. He realizes the loneliness wasn't a sentence, it was an opening to reconnect with a part of him that had been buried. Or picture the student who moves to a new city for studies. No friends, no familiar faces, just empty dorm hallways and long nights that seem endless. Loneliness creeps in and whispers, you don't belong here. But instead of letting it crush her, she walks to the campus library, joins a small group. Whisper raises her hand in class. Slowly she finds her voice. She meets others who were just as afraid, just as lonely. The loneliness was not a verdict that she didn't fit in. It was an invitation to create new spaces of belonging. Loneliness can show up in a crowded house too. Think about the woman who sits in her living room, surrounded by family, yet feels invisible. Everyone is busy, everyone is on their phone, no one notices her silence. She could take that loneliness as a verdict, believing she doesn't matter. But instead, she takes it as an invitation. She starts walking every morning, breathing deeply, talking to herself like a friend. That simple act of being with herself, of treating herself with kindness, begins to heal something inside. Loneliness gave her the doorway to self-love, We've been told to fear loneliness, to treat it like a disease, to avoid it at all costs. But what if loneliness is simply an invitation to grow? The seed does not bloom while it's surrounded by noise. It blooms in the darkness of the soil. In the same way, whispers, we often bloom in the silence of loneliness. That quiet space allows us to ask questions we've never asked before. Who am I when no one's watching? What do I truly want from this life? What dreams have I abandoned just to fit in? Those questions are invitations, not condemnations. Think of the entrepreneur who works late into the night, building her dream while everyone else sleeps. She feels lonely, isolated, unsure she's even making the right choices. But that very loneliness becomes the fire that shapes her resilience. She realizes she doesn't need a cheering crowd to validate her vision. The solitude invites her to trust her instincts, to keep building even when no one else sees the value. Years later, when success arrives, she realizes it was the lonely nights that carved her strength. Or consider the elderly man whose children have grown and moved far away. The house that once rang with laughter is now filled with silence. At first, he feels forgotten, as though life has closed its doors on him. But then he picks up his guitar, an old passion he had shelved for decades. He begins playing for himself, for the neighbors, even teaching kids in the community. His loneliness became an invitation to contribute in a new way, to find meaning in sharing his gifts. Even heartbreak carries this truth. The woman left by the partner she trusted most feels devastated, abandoned. Nights feel endless, and loneliness wraps itself around her. But in that space of emptiness, she begins writing poetry, pouring her heart into words. That vulnerability draws others to her writing, people who say, "Your words gave me hope." Her loneliness wasn't a verdict that she was unworthy. It was an invitation to turn her pain into purpose. Loneliness does not have to mean emptiness. It can mean rediscovery, creation, reflection. It can be the silence where you finally hear your own heartbeat, the quiet where your dreams begin to speak again. It is not a prison cell. It is a doorway, one that leads you back to yourself. Fearless does not mean fear-free. Too often we misunderstand courage and think that brave people feel no fear at all. We imagine them standing tall, their hearts steady, their voices unshaken, their steps unflinching. But that is not the truth. Every fearless act in history, every bold decision, every step into the unknown has been taken by someone who was afraid but chose to move anyway. Fearless does not mean you erase fear. It means you refuse to be controlled by it. It means you acknowledge the trembling hands, the racing heartbeat, the voice that whispers, "What if you fail?" And still you answer with, "I'll do it anyway." Think of the young woman standing backstage before delivering her first speech. Her palms are sweaty, her throat feels tight, and her legs want to give way. Fear screams in her ear, telling her to run, to sit down, to stay silent. But instead, she walks on stage. Her voice shakes at first, but she keeps speaking. By the end, the room is silent, listening, moved by her words. She was not free of fear. She was full, but her decision to step forward, despite the fear, made her fearless. Consider the single mother raising her children alone. She worries about bills, about their future, about whether she is enough. Fear visits her every night when she lays her head on the pillow, whispering that she might fail them. But every morning she gets up, prepares breakfast, packs school bags, and goes to work. She doesn't wait for fear to vanish before she moves. She moves while fear is still present. Her strength is not the absence of fear, it is the persistence to love, to provide, to keep going even when fear tries to paralyze her. Think about the man who wants to start his own business. He's terrified of failure, of losing money, of being judged by family and friends if it doesn't work out. Fear keeps him awake at night, but so does his dream. Eventually, he takes the leap. He invests, he works late hours, he faces setbacks. Fear never truly leaves him. But every day he takes steps forward, and that persistence is what makes him fearless. He is not fearless because he feels no fear, but because he refuses to let fear sit in the driver's seat of his life. Or picture the young girl learning to swim. She stands at the edge of the pool, knees shaking, staring at the water that looks too deep, too overwhelming. Fear tells her she will sink. Fear tells her it's safer on land. But she takes her first step, then another, then finally pushes forward. She panics, but she doesn't give up. Soon she's moving, floating, swimming. Her triumph did not come after fear disappeared. It came because she faced fear head on. That moment becomes a lesson she carries forever. That fear is not the enemy, paralysis is. Fear shows up in love too. Think about the woman who has been hurt before, betrayed, left behind. Fear tells her not to trust again, not to open her heart, not to risk the pain. But one day, whispers. She meets someone kind, she feels her walls rising, fear screaming, don't do it, protect yourself. And yet, she chooses to open her heart little by little. Fear doesn't vanish, but courage grows stronger. Fearless love isn't about never fearing heartbreak, it's about choosing connection even when fear threatens to build walls. Even in everyday moments. Fearless does not mean fear-free. It's the student raising his hand in class even though he fears sounding foolish. It's the employee sharing a bold idea in a meeting while her heart pounds in her chest. It's the artist posting their work online, terrified of criticism but hungry to share their gift. In each of these moments, fear is present, but action is louder. Fearless people are not immune to fear. They are friends with it. They have along the journey without letting it dictate their destination. They treat fear as a signal, a reminder that they are stepping into growth, into something that matters. They know that if they wait for fear to leave, they'll wait forever. Whispers. Fearless does not mean the absence of fear. It means the presence of determination. It's standing in the storm, shaking, and saying, I will not let this stop me. It's failing once, twice, or even 10 times, and still rising again. It's waking up every day with uncertainty and still daring to dream. Fearless means fear is there, but faith is louder. Fear is there, but hope is stronger. Fear is there, but action still happens. Rejection is redirection. At first, it doesn't feel that way. Rejection stings like fire. It shakes your confidence. It makes you question your worth. It whispers cruel lies like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not wanted. And in those moments, it feels final, like a door slamming shut forever. But with time, with perspective, with resilience, rejection reveals its hidden face. It is not the end of the road. It is the you leading you toward a path you may not have chosen otherwise, a path that might be more aligned with who you really are. Think of the student who studies day and night to get into her dream university. She imagines walking through its grand gates, imagines the pride on her parents' faces. But then the letter arrives to inform her heart sinks, her spirit breaks. At first, she feels small and defeated. But then she applies elsewhere, gets accepted into another university where she meets people who inspire her, discovers passions she never knew she had, and builds a future more fulfilling than she could have imagined. What felt like rejection was simply redirection, steering her towards something better. Consider the man who proposes a business idea at work. He's passionate, he's prepared, but his boss dismisses him with a flat "non bao." Embarrassment burns inside him. For days, he replays the rejection in his head, wondering if he's foolish. But instead of giving up, he takes that same idea, refines it, and starts his own venture. Years later, the business thrives beyond anything he could have done in that company. That knot was not a dead end. It was a sign that was meant to build something of his own. Rejection shows up in love too, whispers. Imagine the young woman who gives her heart fully, only to be told, I don't feel the same way. She feels crushed, as if she will never be enough for anyone. But in time, whispers, she realizes that rejection was protection. It freed her from someone who could not see her worth, redirecting her towards someone who values her deeply, who celebrates her soul, whispers. That closed door in love wasn't a verdict on her value, it was a redirection to something healthier, truer, more aligned with her spirit. Even in daily life, rejection often holds hidden blessings. Think of the job seeker who goes to interview after interview only to hear, we've decided to move forward with someone else. Every rejection chips away at their confidence. But one day, after countless no's, they finally land a job that excites them, one that fits their talents perfectly. Later, they look back and realize that every earlier rejection saved them from roles that weren't meant for them, leading them to the right opportunity at the right time. Rejection also pushes us to grow. Picture the athlete who tries out for the team and doesn't make the cut. He's devastated, embarrassed in front of his peers. But instead of quitting, he trains harder, practices longer, builds discipline and resilience. The next year, not only does he make the team, whispers, but he becomes one of its strongest players. That initial rejection was not the end of his story. It was the spark that fueled his greatness. Think of the writer who sends her manuscripts to publishers only to receive rejection letters one after another. Each no feels like a stab, but she keeps going. As she revises, improves, and believes in her words. Finally, one publisher says, "Wise." That book goes on to touch thousands of lives. Later, hers. She realized that the rejections along the way made her sharper, tougher, and more prepared. Hers. Rejection was not failure. It was relent toward the version of herself who was ready to succeed. Sometimes rejection is life's way of clearing space. Hers. Imagine applying for a promotion convinced you're ready, only to see it go to someone else. Disappointment weighs heavy. But a few months later, hers. A new position opens, one even better than the promotion you thought you wanted. You realize that if you had gotten the earlier role, you would have been trapped, unable to step into this greater opportunity. The rejection redirected you to something beyond what you could see at the time. Rejection is never easy. It bruises the ego. It hurts the heart. It tests your spirit. But what if, instead of seeing rejection as the end, we started seeing it as guidance? What if every no is life saying, not this, not here, not yet, something else, something better? Something more aligned with your truth is waiting. The door that closes is simply pointing you to the one that is meant to open. Whispers. True strength is born in solitude. We often imagine strength as something that shows itself in front of crowds, applause, achievements, recognition. But real strength is not built when the world is watching. It is forged in the quiet moments when no one sees, when no one claps, when no one even knows the battles you're fighting. Solitude is not emptiness. It is the ground where resilience takes root. It's the silent space where you face yourself, where you learn to stand tall without leaning on the constant support of others. Think of the student who studies late into the night, while her friends are out laughing, posting pictures and living loudly. She feels alone, isolated, as though life is passing her by. But in that solitude, she builds discipline, focus, and knowledge. Years later, when she achieves her dreams, people will see her success, but not the lonely nights it was born from. Her strength was not built in the moment of celebration. It was shaped in the silence where she chose to keep going, even when no one was there to cheer her on. Consider the man who loses his job unexpectedly. Friends vanish, support fades, and he finds himself sitting at his kitchen table, staring at bills piling up. Fear threatens to consume him, but instead of collapsing, he uses that solitude to reflect, to strategize, to rebuild. In that quiet, painful season, he discovers creativity he never knew he had. He starts a small business, something he would have never dared to try if he hadn't been pushed into solitude. His strength came not from people lifting him up, but from the silent hours where he lifted himself. Solitude also builds emotional strength. Think about the woman who goes through heartbreak. Nights stretch long and empty, and loneliness becomes her companion. At first, it feels unbearable, but over time, she learns to sit with herself, to heal without rushing, to listen to her own heart again. In solitude, she realizes she doesn't need someone else to define her worth. She learns to love herself deeply, and that love becomes unshakable. When she finally chooses to love again, she does it from a place of strength, not desperation. Her solitude became her greatest teacher. Even artists know this truth. True strength is born in solitude. The painter who spends hours alone with a blank canvas, the writer who sits in silence with nothing but words, the musician who practices when the world sleeps. Their creations, their masterpieces, their brilliance all come from the strength they built in solitude. The audience only sees the final performance, but the real power was born in the lonely hours of practice, in the solitude that demanded discipline and focus. Think about the traveler who ventures alone to a foreign country. No familiar faces, no comforting voices, just her and the unknown. At first, fear takes hold. What if she gets lost? What if she can't handle it? But as she navigates new streets, learns new cultures, and solves challenges alone, she discovers confidence she didn't know existed. That solitude, that independence, gives her a strength that will carry to every corner of her life. True strength is not the loud kind that demands recognition. It is the quiet kind, built when you are alone with your thoughts and fears, your doubts, and still decide to keep moving forward. Picture the athlete training before sunrise, running miles alone while the world sleeps. The crowd will later cheer for the medals, but the real strength is born in the solitude of those early mornings when no one was watching. Or consider the elderly woman living alone after losing her spouse. At first, the silence feels unbearable, the empty chair a reminder of what she has lost. But in that solitude, she begins gardening, talking to neighbors, and even mentoring young people in her community. She realizes that she carries within her the strength to create meaning, even in the quiet. Solitude didn't break her, it revealed her resilience. Solitude strips away the noise, the distractions, the opinions of others. It leaves you face to face with yourself, whispers, and that is where true strength begins. In solitude, you learn who you are when no one is watching, when no one is validating you, when no one is applauding. That is the foundation of courage, resilience, and authenticity. It is in the stillness that you discover the power that was inside you all along. Her story is not about survival, it's about rebirth. Survival means getting through the storm, but rebirth means rising after it with new wings. Survival is holding you underwater, waiting for the tide to pass, but rebirth is coming out of that water transformed, stronger, wiser, and more alive. Too many people, but their life is only about enduring pain, pushing through hardship, and proving they can take the blows. But a woman's story does not end with she made it through. Her story becomes truly powerful when it transforms into she rose again, and she became someone new. Think of the woman who lost everything in a failed marriage. For a time, she lived in the shadow of heartbreak, thinking survival was her only task, paying the bills, raising her children, keeping food on the table. But as the months passed, she discovered something deeper. She began studying again, learning skills she never thought she could, building a life that wasn't just about enduring, but about thriving. She didn't just survive being left behind, she was reborn as an independent, powerful woman who realized her worth had never depended on anyone else. Consider the young girl who grew up bullied in school. Every day felt like survival, holding back tears, pretending the words didn't cut, hiding her pain so no one would see how much it hurt. But one day, instead of staying silent, she started writing about her experiences, sharing them online. Others who had felt the same pain began to connect with her words. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was turning her pain into purpose. She was reborn as a voice for the voiceless, someone who showed others they weren't alone. Rebirth is not about forgetting the struggle, it's about using it as the soil for growth. Think of the man who loses his job after decades of work. At first, every day is about surviving the shame and the fear. He worries what others think, he fears he's too old to start again. But slowly he begins freelancing, then builds his own small company. The rejection that once made him feel small became the moment of transformation. Whispers. His story was not to manage to get by, but was reborn into someone who created opportunity for others. Rebirth can happen in silence too. Imagine the woman who has been battling depression, waking up every day just trying to get out of bed. At first, survival is the goal, simply making it through the day. But one morning, she chooses to take a walk. Then she chooses to journal, to open up to a friend, to seek help. Day by day, she rebuilds herself. She doesn't just survive the darkness, she emerges into light, finding joy, laughter, and purpose again. Her story isn't about what she endured, but about the strength and hope she discovered on the other side. Even in the smallest moments, rebirth is present. Picture the artist who faced countless rejections, who nearly gave up on her passion. Survival was keeping her art hidden in notebooks and sketch pads, painting in secret. But one day, she decides to display her work at a small community event. People stop, admire, and connect with her art. That moment of sharing isn't just survival, it's rebirth. She rediscovers her identity, her confidence, and her place in the world. Rebirth is about transformation. It's about the single mother who thought her life was over after abandonment, but who later built a business that provided for her family and inspired others. It's about the student who failed her exams and thought she had no future, but who found a new path that led her to a career she loved. It's about the widow who thought loneliness would consume her, but who found healing in helping others, in giving love to those who needed it most. Survival says, whispers. Rebirth says, I am new, I am stronger, and I carry the fire of my scars as a crown. The story of a woman who has walked through pain is not defined by the pain itself. It is defined by the way she rises, whispers, the way she transforms, the way she turns ashes into beauty. Every setback, every heartbreak, every rejection is not the period at the end of her sentence. It is the comma before the beginning of a new chapter. Her story is not about survival, it's about rebirth. And now, as we bring this journey to a close, I want you to pause for a moment and look inward. Every story you have heard today is not just about loneliness, rejection, or fear. It is about transformation. It is about the unshakable truth that no matter where you are, no matter what you face, no matter how many times life knocks you down, you hold within you the power to rise, You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the author of your own rebirth. You are proof that even the darkest nights cannot dim the light of a determined soul. Think about this: the strongest trees are not those that grow in safe, sheltered gardens. The strongest trees are the ones that stand on mountain cliffs, battered by winds, scorched by the sun, and frozen by snow. Their roots go deeper, their trunks grow thicker. Their branches stretch higher because they had no choice but to endure. That is you. Every storm you have faced has only pushed your roots deeper into courage, only carved your resilience sharper, only prepared you to stand taller than before. Yes, you may have walked through loneliness, but loneliness was not your cage, it was your teacher. You may have faced rejection, but rejection was not your ending. It was your redirection, whispers. You may have stood trembling in fear, but fearless did not mean you were without fear. It meant you dared to move forward anyway. And you may have thought survival was your only goal, but your story is not about survival. It is about the fire of rebirth that lives inside you. So let me ask you, what are you going to do with your scars? Are you going to hide them, ashamed of the battles they represent? Or will you wear them as armor? Proof that you are stronger than what tried to destroy you. Every scar is a reminder not of pain, but of victory. They say, I walked through fire, but I was not consumed. I fell, but I rose, I broke, but I rebuilt myself stronger than ever. And I want to remind you of words that echo across generations. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. You are powerful beyond measure. You were not born to shrink, to stay small, to let fear dictate your life. You were born to shine, to expand, to rise, to live boldly. Fall 7 times and stand up 8. That is your strength, and not in never falling, but in always rising again. When the world tells you you can't, you answer, watch me. When fear whispers, you're not ready, you respond, I may not be ready, but I will begin. When rejection slams a door, you say, this is not my end, it's my redirection. And when loneliness tries to silence you, you declare, this is not my verdict, it's my invitation to discover who I truly am. History has never been changed by those who stayed comfortable. It has always been shaped by those who dared to walk alone, those who dared to stand when others bowed, those who dared to speak when others stayed silent. Greatness has always required moments of solitude, seasons of rejection, and battles with fear. And you carry that same greatness within you. You do not need permission to rise. You do not need approval to shine. You do not need a crowd to validate your worth. As Maya Angelou said, still, like air, I rise. That is the anthem of every fearless woman, rising again and again, no matter how heavy the weight, no matter how sharp the wound, no matter how lonely the road. Because strength is not given, it is born. It is born in solitude, in vulnerability, in rejection, in fear, and in every rebirth that follows. So the next time you feel weak, remember, weakness is not the absence of strength. It is the opportunity for strength to show up. The next time you feel fear, remember, courage is not the absence of fear. It is walking forward while fear tries to hold you back. The next time you feel alone, remember, solitude is not your punishment, it is your preparation. And the next time you are rejected, remember, rejection is not your ending, it is your redirection towards something greater. You are not here to merely survive, you are here to live, to breathe, to rise, to conquer, to inspire. Let these words echo in your heart. She stood in the storm, and when the wind did not blow her way, she adjusted her sails. That is who you are. A woman who does not break under pressure but bends and redirects. A woman who does not crumble under rejection but grows stronger because of it. A woman whose loneliness does not cage her but crowns her with wisdom, whispers. A woman whose fear does not silence her but fuels her to roar louder. So rise, fearless one. Rise with your scars, rise with your doubts. Rise with your trembling hands and beating heart. Rise not because you are unafraid, but because fear will never define you. Rise not because the world has accepted you, but because your worth has never depended on their approval. Rise not because survival is enough, but because your story is about rebirth, about transformation, about becoming everything you were meant to be. And let the world watch as you rise, not quietly, not timidly, but boldly, unapologetically, magnificently. Because the story of your life is not written in fear or in rejection or in survival alone. The story of your life is written in courage and strength and in rebirth. And when history looks back, it will not say she survived. It will say she rose, she conquered, she was reborn,